Imagine spending the better part of 2020 with Bernie Sanders versus Donald Trump.
I think I would make a better president than Bernie.
I'm hearing my name mentioned a little bit tonight. I wonder why.
I'll tell you what the Russians want.
Russia is helping you get elected, so you'll lose to him.
Hey, Bernie, I was talking.
Here's the deal. Let me go.
Whoa.
This conversation shows a huge risk.
At least I didn't have a boss who said to me, kill it.
Never said that.
If we spend the next 4 months tearing our party apart, we're going to watch Donald Trump spend the next 4 years tearing our country apart.
Good evening and welcome to special coverage of the 10th Democratic presidential debate. I'm ELAINE QUIJANO live in Charleston, South Carolina. Tonight we are simulcasting on CBS and our 24-hour streaming news network CBSN. Over the next hour, we will hear directly from the candidates who took part in tonight's event. Our team is here in the spin room, ready to meet the candidates as they make their way out of the debate hall. And our panel of journalists and analysts will be here to get to the substance of what the Democratic hopefuls said. Antoine Seawright is a CBS News political contributor and Democratic strategist. Caitlin Huey-Burns is a CBSN political reporter. And Ed O'Keefe is a CBS News political correspondent. Plus, CBS News Chief Washington correspondent Major Garrett will join us in a few minutes with insight from his perspective in the debate hall tonight. 7 candidates made the stage there. Every one of them had something to gain and perhaps more to lose. Let's start with our panel and get some initial takeaways tonight, starting with you, Ed.
Elaine, great to be with you. Certainly began feisty, but ultimately ended informative. I think what you saw there at the beginning, as unwieldy, as aggressive as it was, is a sign of desperation for a lot of these candidates who understand that tonight was their last opportunity to speak out, not only to voters here in South Carolina, but in those 14 states that vote next week on Super Tuesday. Places like California, Texas, Minnesota, Colorado, Virginia, Vermont. Huge number of delegates available next week. So there was essentially 2 fights underway tonight. Joe Biden trying to maintain his lead here and stave off Bernie Sanders and Tom Steyer, who were inching up on him, and then everyone else trying to break through in all those other states and try to stop the rise of Mike Bloomberg, who's been spending not billions, millions of his own dollars, feels like billions,
Yes,
millions of his own dollars on advertising across the country.
Caitlin?
It did certainly feel like all of these candidates had something to lose at this point because we're just a week away from Super Tuesday, where the bulk of the delegates will be at stake. The biggest question that I had going into this debate tonight was, could these candidates do anything to blunt the momentum coming from Bernie Sanders? We saw him coming off a big win in Nevada. He won New Hampshire. He is considered a front runner in this primary process. You saw the attacks against him early on in this debate, especially from Joe Biden and Michael Bloomberg. But I think Bernie Sanders seemed to be able to move forward his campaign, not taking as many cuts as he might have.
Antoine, quickly.
You can feel the gravity and the expectation in tonight's debate, and it was bigger than South Carolina. This was about the next phase and the next leg of this race. I thought there were many candidates who had something to prove, and those who had something to prove definitely proved what they needed to, Ed O'Keefe. The fact of the matter is, we knew Bernie Sanders was going to be ground zero for everyone on that debate stage, including Michael Bloomberg. That did not fall short, and we knew there was high expectation for the Vice President Biden to perform well, and it was a homecoming for Joe Biden. I think he did everything he was supposed to do tonight.
All right, thank you all. We'll have more with our panel in just a moment. First, let's take a look at some of the biggest moments of the night.
Of the last 50 polls that have been done nationally, I beat Trump 47 of those 50 times. What every study out there, conservative or progressive, says Medicare for all will save money. Ours will cost about $45 billion, not $60 trillion.
No, I was talking.
We are looking at a party that has decided that we're either going to support someone who's a democratic socialist or somebody who has a long history of being a Republican.
9 people shot dead by a white supremacist. Bernie voted 5 times against the Brady bill. I'm not saying he's responsible for the 9 deaths, but that man would not have been able to get that weapon with the waiting period had been what I suggest until you are cleared.
The mayor even said that they disproportionately stopped white people too often and minorities too little. There's 7 white people on this stage talking about racial justice.
At least I didn't have a boss who said to me, kill it. The way that Mayor Bloomberg
never
alleged
said
to
that.
have said to one of his pregnant employees.
Nobody accused me of doing anything other than just making a comment or two. And what the senator did suggest was that we release these women from the non-disclosure agreement. I did that 2 days later.
The time has come for us to stop acting like the presidency is the only office that matters. Not only is this a way to get Donald Trump reelected, we got a House to worry about. We got a Senate to worry about.
And joining our panel now, Senator Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota. Senator, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you. Enjoyed the debate.
So I want to talk a little bit, first of all, of where you stand right now. In our latest CBS News Battleground Tracker, it found that you're polling in the single digits with African-American voters here in South Carolina. How are you feeling coming off the debate stage now?
Good. I have to earn that support. I know that. And I think I made some pretty pointed comments about my plans, that this means not just investing in economic opportunity and improving our criminal justice system, but it's also about making sure people can vote. And I'm the leader in the U.S. Senate when it comes to the bill to stop the voting purges, to stop the gerrymandering, to make sure that kids can be automatically registered to vote when they turn 18. But I thought to commend CBS, I thought the debate was a little less of a slugfest than last time.
You did.
I did. I actually had.
Okay.
No, I mean, it's all relative, isn't it? But I had the opportunity to answer some key questions, as did others, on rural health care and on education and the like. And I think that's really important because there's tons of people watching these debates that have not tuned in until now.
I got 2 questions for you. First of all, there appeared to be, or you appeared to have, a disagreement there with former Vice President Biden regarding the Violence Against Women Act, gun control, and the so-called boyfriend loophole.
Yeah.
First of all, for those that are unfamiliar, remind us what that is and why you're pushing for it.
Well, what this is, it's a bill that I've authored that basically says that people who are convicted of domestic abuse shouldn't be able to go out and get an AK-47 or any gun. And it's there's a high rate of homicide for people that have actually been convicted of domestic abuse. That is my bill. It passed in the House. Debbie Dingell's the lead. Passed in the House, sitting on Mitch McConnell's desk. I think what he was referring to was the Violence Against Women Act. And he was the original author of that. But I think it was some confusion. I don't know why he chose to engage in that fight, but such is life. I thought the bigger point was mine, that if we keep fighting like this as a party for the next 4 months and tearing each other apart, we're going to see 4 more years of Donald Trump tearing our country apart. And so that's why today I chose, yes, I picked a fight with Bernie, because I think that we need to make that clear and have the American people and our party understand who would they be putting at the top of the ticket if they chose Bernie Sanders over me. But for the most part, I thought that I would focus on substance instead of fighting with everyone else.
Senator, you've been campaigning as someone who can win back the heartland, who can win back those Trump voters. But think about Bernie Sanders at the top of the ticket, as you just mentioned. How concerned are you, on a level of 1 to 10, of him being the nominee, what that would do in states like yours or in congressional down-ballot races?
Well, I'm very concerned. I'd first point out, in my own state, I beat Donald Trump by 17 points in a poll about a month and a half ago. In Pennsylvania, which we lost in 2016, I beat Donald Trump by 7 points. I think the vice president beats him by 8. So when you start looking at that, I think you've got to really look not just at those individual states, but the individual congressional districts, because those candidates are not on Medicare for all. Those people that just won in tight races. They are in the kind of districts that I win routinely. Rural, suburban, Republican districts. And I am the only one up there, despite all the talk. There is no doubt about this, fact check it, that has led the ticket that has won in those areas over and over again.
61% of the people who cast their vote will be African American on Saturday, 55% women. This will be the first time in this process we will see the most consequential constituencies in this party and in this country demonstrated through this voting process. How do you intend to put together the right coalition to not only take back the White House, but to bring this party together to win up and down the ballot?
You do it by focusing on economic prosperity and shared prosperity for everyone. You do it by acknowledging that African American women especially have been carrying the votes for this party, and they need some friends. And so to me, that means making the case to bring in those rural voters and suburban voters, that this is, yes, an economic check on this president, but it also is a patriotism check. It is a decency check.
Senator, real quick, before we have to go earn some money, will you win your home state of Minnesota on Super Tuesday?
Yes, I will. I'm ahead in 2 recent polls of Senator Sanders, and it's one of the few Super Tuesday states where there's someone that's clearly ahead of him. I hope after this debate that's going to change as people see how strong we are. But I have staff in every one of the 14 states, and we're going to go out there and make my case that if you're tired of the noise and the nonsense and the extremes in our politics, you have a home with me.
Senator Amy Klobuchar. Senator, thank you so much for your time.
It's great to be on.
Let's go back in the debate hall right now, where our chief Washington correspondent, Major Garrett, is standing by with former Vice President Joe Biden. Major?
Elaine, thanks very much. Welcome back to the main stage. Mr. Vice President, great to see you.
Good to be here.
I know you're tired of talking about the shrinking poll gap here in South Carolina. What I want to ask you is, did you turn that around tonight? Did you clinch a victory for you on the stage tonight?
The last poll I saw was the NBC poll showing me up 15 points. And that's less than I was up before.
Right.
I will find that out. I don't know. Look, I'm not very good at pontificating what's happening.
But you've got a great gut instinct, Mr. Vice President. You needed a big night tonight. You know a lot was riding on this performance. Right. How'd it go?
That's for the voters to decide. I said what I had when I got a chance to say something. I said what I had to say. And look, it's all about whether or not we're going to give people an even shot. The idea that, you know, progressive is what we're looking for and not a revolution. This idea of a revolution, it's not going to happen. People want progress. They want to build on what we had, not go back, but build on what we had. And the idea, we should have a health care policy that covers people. We do that. We can afford it. We can get it done.
Is the very notion of revolutionary politics within the Democratic Party disqualifying?
No, it's not disqualifying. It's worth competing about. But the fact is, the idea that Bernie's going to bring out more people than Barack and I brought out in 2012 is just...
or 2008 even.
2008 is just not like... I mean, and you look what's happened so far. You've got to be able to go out and get mainstream Democrats, and you've got to be able to go out and get independents and some Republicans to vote to bring this country together. And you do that by talking sensibly about what's at stake. And I think that what we're talking about now is, you know, spending $60 billion. You know, I mean, it's just not
I believe the number we raised and others raised on the stage was $60 trillion.
I mean, trillion, I meant to say.
Over 10 years.
Freudian slip. $60 trillion. And it's, but, you know, it's just kind of bizarre.
One more political question. If you don't win South Carolina, can Joe Biden, former Vice President of the United States, carry on in this campaign with any hope of securing the nomination? You're going to win.
I'm going to win South Carolina.
By how much?
I don't know.
Does it matter?
I think it's just important that I win. Just like
1 point is enough.
1 point is enough, but I think I can win by a lot more than that. Look, the African American community knows me, my record. They've known me for the last 40 years. I've kept my word. I've done everything I've said. They know who I am, and they know I'm not Johnny-come-lately to this.
And yet, in the first 3 contests where you competed against this entire field, you've underperformed.
Well, I haven't underperformed in terms of, let me put it this way. The first 3 contests were not contests. The first 2 contests were not contests that represented what America looks like.
Not diverse enough, in other words.
Not diverse enough. No Democrat has ever won without overwhelming black support. It's not possible to win. And being able at the same time to get working class, high school educated folks voting for you. That's the base of my support my whole career. That's one of the reasons Barack picked me to be on the ticket with him. That's why we did so well in Pennsylvania and other states. And in all those states, Bernie talks about he's leading. I'm beating them all in each of those states.
Some issues that were raised on the stage tonight included comments that Senator Sanders has made about either Israel or a very well-known lobby in America for Israel, about Cuba, about Nicaragua, about some of his what other people on this stage have implied is an unvetted past? Are any of those things, A, disqualifying, or do you think the American people, second question, know enough about Senator Sanders, either rhetoric or record?
No, they do not, because he has not been. No, look, you've checked every vote I've ever had for the last 40 years. I mean, not you personally, okay? Every single, no, literally, not figuratively, every major vote I've ever taken the last 40 years. And I'm still standing in national polls, with a few exceptions. I was winning. I've been winning. And so the point is...
And is it your assessment that Senator Sanders has not received that level of scrutiny?
I'll lay you 8-5. No one knows he voted against the Brady Bill 5 times. I'll lay you 8-5. No one knows he supported the gun lobby.
Mr. Vice President, hard rap means I've got to go.
All right,
and you do too.
I do too.
Elaine, back to you from the main stage.
Thank you.
Major, thank you. We are going to take a quick break. Much more coming up from Charleston, South Carolina. Senator Bernie Sanders is joining us. We'll get his take on tonight's debate. And for those of you watching on your local CBS station, don't forget to download the free CBS News app. It will let you stream our 24-hour streaming news network, CBSN, including our extended coverage coming up in the next hour. We'll be right back.
What we need to do is to do what every other major country on earth does, guarantee health care to all people. One of the options is a 7.5% payroll tax on employers, which will save them substantial sums of money.
That was, of course, Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders, who joins us now on set here in the spin room. Senator Sanders, thank you so much for being with us.
I agree with that guy. I thought that was a brilliant remark.
Let me ask you about that guy. That guy is a front runner. And
so I learned tonight.
How'd that feel? Do you feel like you successfully convinced people who are skeptical of many things about your campaign, particularly how you're going to pay for your plans?
I do. Look, the truth is, nothing I am saying is radical. I live 50 miles away from the Canadian border. They manage to provide health care to every man, woman, and child, spending half as much per capita as we do. Look, the bottom line is, do we have the guts to take on the pharmaceutical industry that charges us the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs? Do we have the courage to take on the healthcare industry? Combined, they made $100 billion in profits last year. That's what this fight is about. Nobody can defend a system which is so wasteful, so expensive, and leaves 87 million people uninsured or underinsured.
Senator, can I ask you about your comments about former Cuban leader Fidel Castro? You got a chance to discuss the substance of it in the debate. Let me ask about the raw politics. You know that there are at least 2 South Florida Democratic congresswomen who have expressed grave concern with what you said and are concerned that even they, other Democrats across the state of Florida, could suffer if they have to share a ticket with someone who is sympathetic to at least some of the Castro legacy. What would you say to them?
2 responses. Number 1, truth is truth. If somebody in Saudi Arabia or any country in the world teaches illiterate people to read, you can tell me that's a bad thing? It is not. Barack Obama made the point that Cuba had made good progress in healthcare and education. Cuba is an authoritarian country. I have decried and condemned authoritarianism, whether it's on the left or the right, all over the world. Second point is the way we are going to win in Florida and in every other state in this country. And the reason I think I am ahead of Trump in the last 47 out of 50 national polls, ahead of him in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan, is to grow, to have the largest voter turnout in the history of this country. And the only way you do it is by talking to the issues that the political establishment has long ignored. Truth is, we have massive income and wealth inequality. Truth is that working people have not seen a real wage increase in 45 years. We have today
go
ahead.
But on this issue of the potential political peril you and Democrats could suffer in Florida, Congresswoman Donna Shalala said, come on down to Miami and meet with the people who have been affected by his regime. Would you be willing to do that and hear them out?
I go all over the country, of course. Cuba is a dictatorship. I've said that 8 million times. But that does not mean to say, as Obama pointed out, that even under a dictatorship, you could teach people to read and to write, that you could provide health care to all people. So I think what you happen, I find it very interesting that I saw what Barack Obama had to say when he was talking to Cubans, and he made the right point. He says, your economy is terrible. You're living in poverty. You've done some good things in healthcare and education. I agree with that. Obama said it, no problem. I said it, oh my God, the world is falling apart.
But you know, you're a democratic socialist. That was a socialist regime. You can understand why there's misperceptions.
No,
there's at least misperceptions.
Those are political attacks. It's not misperceptions. The views that I believe in, when it's healthcare for all, having a tax structure that is, look, we have an insane situation where Amazon, owned by the wealthiest guy in America last year, after making $11 billion in profit, didn't pay a nickel in taxes. Think that makes sense? Do you think it makes sense that we give tax breaks to billionaires and you have 500,000 people sleeping out on the street? They got 45 million people in student debt. We have to change the priorities. The only way we change priorities is taking on the economic and political special interests in this country. That's what my campaign is about.
Senator, there's been so much of the discussion focused on how you would pay for Medicare for all, but how would you actually pass it? If you look at the dissent coming from your rivals on the stage, there is not a lot of support from them for it. And also, if you look at the criticism you've received for not being able to pass much legislation in Congress,
well, that's
how do you actually do it?
How much time do you have? Yeah, I passed the most significant veterans legislation in modern history. We brought $11 billion more into primary care. 9 million people now have access to health care, previously not. Passed the first time the War Powers Act to get us out of the war in Yemen. So I reject categorically that we don't have a strong record.
All right, Senator Bernie Sanders. Senator Sanders, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Coming up after the break, Senator Elizabeth Warren joins us on set, and our panel will be back to break down more highlights from tonight's debate in Charleston, South Carolina. Stay with us.
Wealth tax in America, because with a 2-cent tax on just the top 0.1%, we have a chance to invest in universal child care for every one of our babies, to really level the playing field. Put $50 billion into historically black colleges and universities.
That was Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren, who joins us now on set here in the spin room. Senator, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
So the stakes are incredibly high for all the candidates on stage, including yourself. How are you feeling after your performance?
Oh, I feel good about it. You know, I had a chance to get out there and talk about my values, and also to talk about why I think I would make the best nominee for the Democrats and the best president of the United States. And after all, that's what this is about.
Senator, there is a graveyard concern about possible down ballot carnage if we nominate the wrong person in this party we all love so much. And the number one rule I learned in politics, you cannot govern if you do not win. You have plans. Mm-hmm. You're very proud of that.
Yep.
So how will your plans be implemented if we do not win?
Well, that's the whole point. We do have to win. But you know what I think we're seeing is that the Democratic Party is a progressive party. And progressive ideas are popular. You know, you just ran at the top here. The whole notion of what we could do, progressive, a 2-cent tax on just a tiny handful of folks at the very top. And all of a sudden, we got money to invest in an entire generation. We've got money to invest in our babies. We've got money to invest in our public schools. We've got money to invest in our HBCUs. We've got money to make technical school and 2-year college and 4-year college tuition free. We got money to cancel student loan debt for 43 million Americans. To me, this is about values. Let me go out and talk about this, because here's the thing. Democrats really like that, but so do independents and Republicans. A majority of Republicans know it's time for a 2-cent wealth tax. They see it as they've been getting the short end of the stick too. And that's true for really the main parts I'm putting forward. My anti-corruption plan, good for Democrats and a majority of Republicans. My plan to increase Social Security payments by $200 a month by increasing taxes on the top 2%. Democrats like it, Republicans like it. That's how we get elected down ballot, and it's how we govern. We start with the things, the good progressive things that most of America actually wants to see.
Senator, we're just a week away from Super Tuesday. I know you're counting the days. Your home state of Massachusetts will be one of those states making up its mind, where the bulk of the delegates are going to be decided a week from now. Can you guarantee that you will win your home state?
Look, I'm out here making my case to everybody all across the nation. And I'm so deeply grateful to the people in my home state who helped me beat an incumbent Republican back in 2012. You know, you have to remember about this. I've never been in politics before then. And when I got in that race, I was down 17 points. But a lot of good folks in Massachusetts said, you get out on point, you take on this race that a lot of people thought was not winnable by a Democrat, and we'll come help you. And right up to Election Day, people were saying, I'm not sure if it's going to work or not. By golly, I beat that guy by 7.5 points. That's what the people of Massachusetts delivered.
So is that
and I'm grateful. Look, I'm out there talking to everybody because that's the way to do it.
Senator Warren, you've heard the metaphor that there's this progressive lane and it's only wide enough for one candidate. It appears Senator Sanders is ahead of you on that. How do you reverse that trend? And is that lane only wide enough for one?
You know, I just think that's the wrong way to look at it. Progressive ideas are popular, not just among Democrats, but also among Republicans.
But it matters who the vote getter is, and right now it's Senator Sanders.
Look, and the point I'm making is I think I'm the person who is the best nominee for the Democrats and will also make the best president, and I'll tell you why. It's not only that I have unshakable values, it's that I have a track record of getting things done. Because I look at it this way. Progressives are going to get exactly one chance to make transformative change. And that means we better have a leader who actually knows how to get in the fight and how to make change happen. That's something I have done. I built a Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. I fought banks. I built coalitions. And I've done it in my time in the Senate, and I'm going to keep on doing it.
Based on the results so far, do you need to adjust your campaign strategy?
Look, this is who I am. I'm not somebody whose campaign is shaped by a bunch of consultants. I'm not somebody who came to this and said to people, tell me the way that you can make me win. The fight for working families, the fight for justice, the fight for racial justice, for economic justice, for environmental justice, this has been my fight for my whole life. I was a teacher. I was a researcher. I was studying what happened to working families across this country. And I only got into politics because it was another tool to be able to fight for those families. I'm staying in that fight.
Senator Elizabeth Warren, Senator, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. And back with me now, our panel of Major Garrett, Caitlin Huey-Burns, and Antoine Seawright, as you just saw. Major, let's talk a little bit about what we've heard from the candidates just now, starting with Senator Warren. I mean, she is someone who entered into this debate hall very much trying to kind of get that momentum, perhaps, that has eluded her, right?
Sure. On stage tonight, you saw several candidates trying to galvanize, maybe for the first time, or re-galvanize something that they once had. I would put Vice President Biden in the re-galvanize category. Pete Buttigieg tried to galvanize something that looked impressive in Iowa, not so impressive in New Hampshire, very much not impressive in Nevada. He's looking for a restart, a reboot here in South Carolina. Same with Amy Klobuchar. And to a lesser degree, Mike Bloomberg, not here in South Carolina, but introducing himself in a better way than he did the first time for Super Tuesday. All of that was not only at stake, but part of the underlying motivations. And the great thing now is we get to watch and see exactly how the voters interpreted what they saw. And what they saw was a good deal of substance. We tried to do that. That was a goal, an avowed goal of the questioners, myself included. Let's get to some substance, and I think we accomplished at least part of that tonight.
Major, some candidates came into tonight's debate looking for it to be a political filling station, as we say in South Carolina, Elaine, fill up and get the needed and necessary fumes to go the rest of the way, even to get through Saturday. I'm not sure that mission was accomplished by everyone, because there was some on that debate stage tonight, Caitlin, that really got lost in the noise and did not come through in the lyrics part.
Everybody tonight on stage, it looked like they were kind of this is their last last-ditch effort, right? Super Tuesday is a week away. That's where the bulk of the delegates will be decided. You heard from Elizabeth Warren just now. She really went after Michael Bloomberg, and that makes me wonder if these candidates still feel like Bloomberg has a shot, even after some poor debate performances.
Well, you certainly can't ignore the financial resources he has poured in so far, more than $400 million, and the financial resources he can perpetually call upon. As Antoine knows better than I do because he's actually involved in politics, I'm just an observer. You don't stop a campaign because you give up hope. You stop a campaign because you've run out of money. And the people who once wrote checks for you and once believed in you to contribute to you stop believing. Yeah. And South Carolina is going to be one of those way stations where people are either going to keep believing or stop believing.
Well, Major, keep in mind there are candidates on the debate stage tonight that have spent $0 in Super Tuesday states, while California's early voting, North Carolina, South Carolina, Texas, and I think Minnesota. That could be problematic if the necessary money and momentum does not transfer from the Palmetto State.
Right, and the fact that you are measuring the distance between those dates, the South Carolina primary and Super Tuesday, you can measure it in hours.
It's a game of inches.
That means
it is literally a game of inches. So every play you run, every player you have on the field, i.e. endorsements with you, it all matters in the grand scheme of things.
And that's why this question of momentum looms so large over not only where Senator Sanders finds himself, where he's heading, and where people are trying to stop him from getting.
All right, still to come. We will have much more from Charleston, South Carolina after a break. Our panel of experts will be back to break down more highlights from tonight.
We need to have an alternative to Donald Trump. I'm talking about doubling the minimum wage, cutting taxes by 10% for everybody who makes less than $250,000, and creating over 4.5 million good-paying union jobs.
That, of course, is Democratic presidential candidate Tom Steyer, who joins us now on set here in the spin room. Thank you very much for being with us.
Nice to be with you.
So our latest CBS News Battleground Tracker found you in third place here in South Carolina. And I wonder what your thought is after this performance tonight. Do you think you made enough of a connection to win? And what does success look like for you here?
Well, I think that I distinguish I think that the press wants to believe that this race is down to Bernie Sanders, a Democratic socialist, and Mike Bloomberg, someone who's had a career as a Republican politician. And what I was trying to say tonight, and I believe broke through on, is the idea that actually we need to pull this party together. That any one of those is a very risky choice that does increase the probability that we re-elect Donald Trump. That is someone who's worked for economic justice and racial justice and climate justice for well over a decade. I'm scared for the people of the United States if we really increase the chance that Donald Trump gets reelected. That would be a terrible outcome, and Democrats need to come together behind somebody who can pull this party together, who understands job creation and growth, which I do because of my business background, but also understands justice and has fought for it successfully, which I have.
Tom, you mentioned the press, so let's just talk about the press for a second.
Yeah.
Part of the narrative is, well, Mike Bloomberg can stay around as long as he wants to. I want to put the question to you. Can you stay around as long as you want to? Will you stay around in this race? Because you do have financial resources you can call upon to stay in this race for a very long time. Are you going to be in as long as Mike Bloomberg?
Look, you're right. I can stay around as long as I want. I want to be able to show that I can attract that diverse Democratic coalition that we need to pull together in November of 2020. I'm somebody who's built a big grassroots organization. I've been working with the African American community for years on issues. I've been fighting for racial justice. I've built a bank around racial justice. Right. I want to be able to show that I can pull together, that I can stay in as long as I want.
Where else are you going to do it? Well, you have to hit 15% here in South Carolina. Looks like you're going to do that. You have to hit 15% in order to get delegates in this race. That's how it works.
Right.
You're probably going to do that here. Where else are you going to do it? You're going to do it in California?
I think if I do well here, and I don't want to do that, just that. I want to do better than that in South Carolina to show that actually I'm the person who can do that. And then I want to take it from here and do it in all the other Super Tuesday states to say, look, this is what a progressive Democrat looks like. This is what a progressive Democrat who understands growth and job creation looks like. This is how we actually beat Donald Trump in November. That is the goal. And I believe that we've got to get behind someone who can do that. And I'm trying to show that it's me.
Caitlin?
We've seen in our CBS News Battleground Checker poll that Joe Biden has lost some support among black voters while you've gained support. What have you been doing here in South Carolina to make up some ground?
Look, I'm talking explicitly about race. You know, I think, and I tried to say tonight, there is a substantial racial subtext to every policy area in the United States. We have not been honest about it. We've not been willing to deal with it honestly. And I'm actually trying to do that. You know, that's why I talk about reparations, because that is the truth. Something terrible happened. We have never resolved it. We've never told the truth about what's happened, and we have to do it together, including about African-American contributions to America, building America and leading America morally, so that we can actually figure out the best way to repair the damage so that we can move on for everybody.
And on that issue, Tom, reparations, some people talk about a commission to study. You want to go farther than that, more rapidly than that, as I understand it, correct?
Look, a commission to study is a commission to delay. I am talking about a solutions-oriented group to start on day one to decide not whether to do it, but how best to do it. And I think it would be inappropriate for me to dictate the best way to do it. The one thing that I've spoken about very specifically is $125 billion for the historically black colleges and universities. It's a perfect example of something where...
Do you regard that as a down payment?
I do. That's 30 times what they're, in an average year, that would be 30 times what they're getting now. And in the highest year, it's 100 times what they'd be getting now. I'm talking about reviving a system that's worked, that has a great historical reason for being, which is black kids couldn't go to the mainline colleges and universities. And we can rejuvenate and revive that system to a place better than it's ever been, as a way of, you're right, making a down payment to make sure that kids get a chance to go as far as they can in terms of education.
Tom Steyer. Tom, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Let's continue the conversation here with the panelists. And Major Garrett, let me start with you, because this question, right, of reparations and the specificity, right, it is all about the details here. And how does one begin this painful calculation? How is that determined? It's a very difficult question.
And it wasn't so long ago that the debate stage was much larger, and a woman named Marianne Williamson was on the stage. And she said something, whether you like Marianne Williamson or not, she said something that I found to be deeply profound, which is it's about dollars, but it's also about the apology. Right. It's about the psychological weight of an America saying this was an injustice of massive proportion, and the process of apologizing and recognizing it has a psychic weight almost equivalent to the dollar amount. That was something that gained a lot of attention for her in that conversation. And it's part and parcel of this entire process. And I think when Tom Steyer says a commission means pushing it off, you don't need a commission to apologize. You don't need a national movement in Congress to apologize. But it does become far more difficult, not only politically, but practically, some of the mechanistic ways of determining what is the dollar amount, who qualifies, and what is the year-by-year basis of that. But the apology itself has its own weight.
Antoine, let me ask you, how resonant is this issue of reparations for African-American voters?
Well, Elaine, you know, my grandparents were sharecroppers. They could not read or write, so they did not have some of the things that most communities had who did not look like mine. And so I don't know if you can put a dollar amount on the experiences or the life experiences that my sharecropping grandparents in Swansea, South Carolina went through. But here's what I do know. For every African-American family like mine, they want a better quality of life for the next generation. So the best way we can answer the call or answer the question is to ensure a policy agenda that speaks to the hearts and minds of communities that look like mine, so they're no longer generational struggles. And that's what we have to do with this party. This Democratic Party has a challenge and an obligation to make future generations better than previous generations.
But the fact that this conversation is happening at all in a state where 60% of the Democratic primary electorate 4 years ago was African American is a sign or helps explain why Tom Steyer is in third place. He has sparked this conversation. He has caught the attention of black voters in this state, and it's helped him over the last several weeks when nobody else was looking. He was here in South Carolina, plodding away, building support to the point now where Joe Biden had to go out of his way tonight to try to call him out on a few things to try to blunt his momentum.
Caitlin, is Tom Steyer a name, when you've had conversations with voters, that comes up with voters? And if so, what are their impressions?
It does. First of all, he has had spent a lot of money, especially here in South Carolina.
Do you think?
His name is all over the airwaves. So when I hear from voters, they say that they've seen an ad from Tom Steyer. But I think what he was talking about was also the ground game that he's built up here. He's spent a lot of time here, and that's something that people have seen him or heard about them. It's not just the ads. I'm wondering, though, I mean, Antoine, we've been talking a lot over the course of this campaign about the generational divides in a state like South Carolina, and where you're starting to see some of Biden's support maybe fracture a little bit. What are some of those generational divides? Is that something that speaks to this?
I don't know if it's generational, but I think it's more the ebbs and flows. But I do know Tom Steyer is smart because he's doing a high-tech and a high-touch style of campaigning in a state like South Carolina. That matters, and for states that follow South Carolina on the map.
All right, Major Garrett, Caitlin Huey-Burns, Ed O'Keefe, and Antoine Seawright, thank you all so much. Coverage will continue on our 24-hour streaming network, CBSN. You can watch it at cbsnews.com or download the CBS News app. We'll have results from our instant poll to get a look at how voters reacted to this latest debate. There will be more from South Carolina on your late local news on this CBS station. And be sure to stay tuned for a special live edition of The Late Show with Stephen Colbert. From all of us at CBS News, good night from Charleston.